and Fruman are now facing federal campaign finance charges. So in the video, Parnas appears to criticize Yovanovitch, and President Trump then apparently orders him to, quote, get rid of her. So CBS News White House correspondent Paula Reed has been following the story and joins me now. Boy, oh boy, Paula. So Paula, Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham spoke about this video in an interview on Fox News over the weekend. Let's play what she had to say.
I believe that he was there with Rudy Giuliani, somebody that the president trusts, and the president has said that many times. So if somebody that the president trusts has somebody else with him and he's giving him information that he's already heard, and again from the president of another country, I think it's very reasonable that the president would listen to that.
And we should remind people that the president said that he didn't know Lev Parnas really at all. And, you know, yeah, they might have posed for pictures once in a while, but thousands of people pose for pictures with the president. That is true, but thousands of people don't get an opportunity to advise the president, if you will, on what to do with an ambassador. So you spoke to Rudy Giuliani about this. What is he saying?
I did, Anne-Marie, and not only did he confirm he was not at that dinner, he told me he didn't meet Igor Fruman and Lev Parnas until June 2018, which completely undercuts what Stephanie Grisham just said there. She said that these men were there dining in a private setting with the President of the United States because of their relationship with his personal attorney. But at this point, according to Rudy Giuliani, they had no relationship. This raises a lot of questions, Anne-Marie. Among them, why on earth are these two men dining alone with the President of the United States? They have both now been charged with campaign finance violations. And why are they advising the President on certain action to take against U.S. ambassadors? And why is he listening to them? Who are they? He has, as you noted, denied knowing them. So a lot of questions about this relationship. But another one for the White House press office. Anne-Marie, it took me 2 minutes to get that information from Rudy Giuliani, to confirm that basic fact and whether he was at that dinner last night, something the White House press office clearly did not take the time to do.
Really? Also, how is someone able to record the president like that as well?
It's another great question, especially if there's any kind of classified information, sensitive information. We know the president, his campaign, they have been the targets of Russian disinformation campaigns, Russian efforts to meddle in our democratic process. So raises a lot of questions about why these two foreigners were sitting there with the president.
So not only that, then we got this other sort of bombshell. Over the weekend, the New York Times reported that former National Security Advisor John Bolton wrote in his upcoming book that the president wanted to withhold aid from Ukraine until officials announced investigations into the Bidens. We should note that the book is being published by Simon & Schuster, which is a division of Viacom CBS, full disclosure. So what do we know about these reports?
Well, that's right. In the portion of the book that has been obtained by the New York Times, the president allegedly told Bolton explicitly that he wanted to withhold these hundreds of millions of dollars in security aid until the country helped with these politically motivated investigations. This is significant because it completely undercuts the president's defense. And this comes just hours before the president's legal team is expected to address the Senate to defend him in these ongoing impeachment proceedings. And they have argued repeatedly that, in fact, this aid was not tied to these politically motivated investigations. And it will be interesting to see today, Anne-Marie, how this impacts their strategy. I've been reaching out to my sources since this story broke. A lot of the members of the president's impeachment team, they're pretty chatty. They're usually willing to go back and forth, discuss strategy. But here this morning, they've shut it down. They've told me they cannot discuss their strategy today. I think that's notable because clearly this is on their minds and they're grappling with what to do today.
That is so interesting. I know, obviously, the conversation about witnesses keeps bubbling up.
So, yeah, normally Trump's impeachment team is willing to talk today.
Get in the water.
They've shut their mouths.
I don't know. It's unclear because you need those 4 Republicans to vote to hear from witnesses. While right now there is no expectation there will be a vote to remove the president from office, the one lingering question was about witnesses. And with this revelation from Ambassador Bolton, there will be some lawmakers who now will be potentially concerned about aiding a cover-up by not voting for witnesses. So while last week we were pretty confident that they were not going to vote, there were a few who were on the fence. It will be interesting to see how his lawyers handle this and how this could potentially move some of those voters off the fence.
We will see. It all starts at 1 o'clock today. Paula, thank you so much. Our coverage of the historic impeachment trial continues today. You can join us at 12:30 p.m. Eastern for live preview coverage of the second day of opening arguments for the president's legal team. And everything actually begins at 1 o'clock, like I just said. You can also stay up to date by visiting our live blog, cbsnews.com/impeachment.
Hi everyone, I'm Anne-Marie Green.
And I'm Vladimir Dutiev. The world is mourning the loss of NBA legend Kobe Bryant, who was killed in a helicopter crash outside of Los Angeles yesterday. Bryant's daughter Gianna was also killed along with 7 other people. They were all flying to a basketball game when the chopper crashed. The Los Angeles iconic Laker leaves behind his wife and 3 young daughters. It's unclear what caused the tragedy. Federal investigators are on the scene trying to figure out what went wrong as the helicopter plunged to the ground in Calabasas, which is just north of Miami.
Worldwide tributes are pouring in for Kobe Bryant. Former teammate Shaquille O'Neal tweeted that he was so much more than an athlete. Magic Johnson also called him a mentor to both male and female players. President Trump weighed in, saying Bryant loved his family so much and had such strong passion for the future. And former President Obama said Bryant was just getting started in what would have been just as meaningful a second act. Jonathan Vigliotti has more.
This is worldwide. It isn't just Los Angeles. We're all hurting. It's a world of pain right now.
He meant happiness. Basketball legend Kobe Bryant wasn't just one of the greatest to play the game.
Kobe ties it so with 2 seconds left.
He was admired by people around the world for his actions off the court as much as when he was on it.
God, you got a good one introducing the Black Mamba, Kobe Bean Bryant.
The retired NBA star was killed after his personal helicopter crashed into a steep hillside Sunday morning, killing everybody on board, including his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna.
As you can imagine, it's a logistical nightmare in a sense because the crash site itself is not easily accessible.
Debris from the charred helicopter was scattered across the size of a football field. The helicopter was flying in fog that was so thick the LAPD had grounded its helicopter fleet Sunday morning.
I think he was just completely disoriented and couldn't see.
Scott Taylor told us he heard the chopper going down and called 911.
So it just slowly moved over here, turning the track right towards that building, and the impact, I counted maybe 20-25 seconds from the time it was vertical above me, and then I heard the impact about 25 seconds later.
Bryant, his daughter, and 7 other people were on their way to his Mamba Cup tournament, a boys and girls youth basketball league Bryant founded after he retired. Bryant was the coach's daughter, Gianna's team. Among the victims identified on the helicopter, Orange Coast College baseball coach John Altobelli, his wife Carrie, and daughter Alyssa, Sarah Chester, and her daughter Peyton, who was a teammate of Gianna Bryant, and the pilot, Ara Zobayev, along with the girls' assistant coach, Christina Mauser. The retired Lakers shooting guard often called his daughter Gianna Mambacita, after his own court nickname, Black Mamba.
Get fired up about it, we're gonna have a good time.
And like her father, she inherited his love of basketball and hoped to one day play in the WNBA.
I'm still in shock, and I still can't believe that this is real.
We spoke to a group of players who participated in the Mamba tournament.
They meant a lot. Just 2 people I wanted to look up to.
So our Michelle Medina is standing by in Calabasas, California, near the crash site. A federal investigator to show us the scene of the crash today. What sort of activity have you seen this morning?
Well, the sun just came out a short time ago, and up until this point, things have been fairly quiet. There was a big law enforcement presence just behind my shoulder over here, but you can see by the looks of things, it has really thinned out. Authorities, though, they have been asking that fans stay away from this area. A number of fans showed up yesterday. They wanted to get near the scene, but for emergency crews, it really became difficult to access certain areas because of the crash. Many of the roads, the one just behind me, they remain closed at this hour.
Farmers should be safe from the
Michelle, what do we know about how officials are conducting this investigation?
From the demon's control.
Well, I can tell you a team of investigators from the NTSB, also the FAA, is involved in this investigation. But those NTSB investigators are expected to be here at some point this morning. They're going to be back there in those foothills we can tell you once they get there, they're going to be analyzing a lot of information. They're going to be checking the pilot's history, the history of that aircraft. Not only that, the weather conditions. That could be a big factor in all this. Yesterday, there was a lot of dense fog. Visibility was extremely difficult. So no doubt they're going to be looking at all of those factors and try to put the pieces of this puzzle together. When it comes to those investigators getting to the scene, again, you've seen what this looks like just behind here, but we're hearing they are dealing with some very steep terrain, so it makes it extremely difficult to access those areas.
And so what has the reaction been from the people that you see in the area? You've been there all morning long.
Well, nobody's allowed, particularly in this location where I am, because these roads have been closed off. But I can tell you it's much of what people across the nation and really the world have been feeling. It's less than 24 hours now since we got the news, but it is shock and disbelief. There have been tribute after tribute. A lot of people, when it comes to the fans, what they say is that Kobe was a guy. His smile was infectious, and when it came to him, he really put Los Angeles on the map as far as the team, the teamwork. He was a competitor. He loved that. But once he retired, he really gave back so much to this community, whether it was helping with the homeless issue or really just sharing and mentoring others, these young players coming up in the world of basketball.
So, as you know, Nichelle, all NBA games continued as scheduled yesterday. Many players paid their own tributes to Bryant. More games are scheduled today. Are you hearing that we may see perhaps more of some of those tributes?
Well, I'm sure there are going to be many more of these tributes in the days, weeks, months ahead. But one game a lot of people will be closely watching. Tomorrow, the Lakers and the Clippers will be playing at the Staples Center. So no doubt that is going to be a highly emotional game, not just for the fans, but as you can imagine, the players as well.
All right, Nichelle Medina, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay, we've got less than 30 minutes until the next Whoa. Okay, so hold on. Okay, so we got some news.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Now, over a month ago, we said that hearing from witnesses and reviewing documents is the bare minimum for a fair trial. Since then, redacted emails were released that said there was clear direction from the president to hold the military assistance. The GAO concluded that the president broke the law in doing so. And new information from Mr. Jeronis revealed a plot to remove the U.S. ambassador. And now, according to the New York Times, Ambassador Bolton wrote in his book that he was ordered by the president to continue freezing assistance until Ukraine announced the political investigations the president was seeking, including the investigation into the Bidens. This is stunning. It goes right to the heart of the charges against the president. Ambassador Bolton essentially confirms the president committed the offenses charged in the first article of impeachment. It boils down to one thing. We have a witness with first-hand evidence of the president's actions for which he is on trial. He is ready and willing to testify. How can Senate Republicans not vote to call that witness and request his documents? Anyone who says the House case lacks eyewitnesses and then votes to prevent eyewitnesses from testifying, talking out of both sides of their mouth. Also, according to the report, several sections of Mr. Bolton's book further implicate Mr. Mulvaney. Previously, Mr. Mulvaney denied ever being on the phone when the president spoke to Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Bolton writes that Mr. Mulvaney was on the phone with Rudy and the president was discussing the removal of Ambassador Yovanovitch. Mr. Bolton's book is further evidence that a large number of people were, quote, in the loop on this scheme, as Ambassador Sondland said, and now they are all covering up. So it seems like not only is there more evidence that the president held the aid off to get a political gain and investigation, but there seems to be a giant cover-up among so many of the leading people in the White House who knew about it and said nothing about it, let alone tried to stop it. If there was ever even a shred of logic left to not hear witnesses and review the documents, Mr. Bolton's book just erased it. Ambassador Bolton's manuscript was sent to the White House over a month ago. The president ordered everyone with first-hand knowledge of his actions not to testify in the impeachment inquiry. We're all staring a White House cover-up in the face. It is so clear what's going on here. I don't need to spell it out for you. If Senate Republicans are not going to vote to call Mr. Bolton and Mr. Mulvaney and the other witnesses now, if they're not going to ask for notes and emails, they're going to be part of the cover-up too. Because we have this out in the open. It's up to 4 Senate Republicans, just 4 Senate Republicans, to ensure that John Bolton, Mick Mulvaney, Mr. Blair, and Mr. Duffy testify in the Senate trial. It's up to 4 Republicans to get the documents that surrounded their actions in those days. One final point. Of course, the president denied Ambassador Bolton's account in a series of late-night tweets. Already some Republicans are saying, oh, this is just a he said affair. Just a matter of conflicting accounts. I would remind everyone, between President Trump and Ambassador Bolton, only one of them is willing to testify in the Senate under oath. Only Mr. Bolton is willing to swear that he is telling the truth. Senator Carter.
Well, let me thank Senator Schumer for outlining the absolute necessity for this impeachment trial to be able to hear directly from the witnesses that have the direct knowledge. I want to just go back to Saturday with the President's counsel telling us the importance to the President to be able to confront witnesses and to be able to cross-examine. What they said was, in cross-examination, we can find out the truth. Well, we have a different view by Ambassador Bolton in regards to what the President is saying. The only way we can discover the truth is to have Ambassador Bolton testify under oath, subject to cross-examination, in order to find out the truth. Same thing's true with the other witnesses that were not permitted to testify in the House. Mr. Mulvaney has direct knowledge of the President's participation. He has made some statements in the public that seem to corroborate the House manager's case. But let's hear him under oath, subject to cross-examination, to find out the truth. Under the Constitution, The Senate is the body that conducts the trial. We have some guidance from the Supreme Court in the Nixon case as to what we need to do in order to carry out that constitutional responsibility. But to have a trial, you need to hear from witnesses. You need to see the documents. Under Senate precedent, the Senate is not bound by the record established in the House. To the contrary, the Senate has its own responsibility to develop its own record, and not what the House has presented to it. So under all those circumstances, in order to be able to have a fair trial to reach a just conclusion, it's absolutely essential that we allow the witnesses to testify in the Senate, subject to cross-examination, so that we can, in fact, know the truth.
Thank you, Senator Thornton. Senator Baldwin.
It's gut check time for members of the United States Senate. Every senator took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and every senator needs to ask themselves whether they're going to live up to that oath in this Senate impeachment trial. Since the beginning, we have called for a full, fair, and honest trial. And since the beginning, we have called for critical documents and relevant witnesses with first-hand knowledge about President Trump's conduct. Every Senate impeachment trial in our nation's history has included witnesses, and this Senate trial should be no different. The media reports about what former National Security Advisor John Bolton would testify to go to the heart of this impeachment trial: abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Let us not complicate this simple fact. It is obstruction of Congress for the White House to prevent John Bolton from testifying about a direct conversation he had with the president in August of 2019 that implicates the president in an abuse of power. If Ambassador Bolton provided the White House with evidence about President Trump withholding congressionally authorized mandated U.S. security assistance to help Ukraine fight Russian aggression in an exchange for political investigations from Ukraine to benefit President Trump personally, then that would constitute direct evidence of abuse of power. If Ambassador Bolton testifies to these facts about his August conversation with President Trump, then it supports what Ambassador Sondland told Senator Johnson in an August 30th, 2019 phone call. In that conversation, Ambassador Sondland said the release of withheld U.S. security assistance to Ukraine was conditioned on an investigation by Ukraine that would benefit President Trump politically. It would also directly contradict what the president told Senator Johnson on the phone on August 31st, 2019, where, according to Senator Johnson, the president said, "I would never do that." Who told you that? It is my hope that my Republican friends in the Senate would want to have John Bolton testify so that he is under oath and so that we have all the facts. It is my hope that my Republican friends will want to know if there is evidence that President Trump and my colleagues the truth. The people of Wisconsin certainly want to know if the president did not tell Senator Johnson the truth. The American people simply want all the facts. They want the truth. In order to provide them that, the Senate must support testimony from relevant witnesses with first-hand knowledge about President Trump's conduct. John Bolton has that, and the Senate must have him testify as a witness in this impeachment trial.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for doing this. So it seems like the White House is turning the tables on Democrats, saying that it's you, your party, the one that's trying to undo the 2016 election also kind of influence this year's elections. How do you respond to that in light of your concern that this will turn into a he said, and
the truth is the truth. This is serious stuff. A charge of impeachment is one of the most serious things a Congress can do, and we need all the facts out. And the facts, however they come out, we accept them. We want the truth. So do the American people. It's getting up to 80% of Americans want witnesses and documents. It's getting higher than 60% of Republicans want witnesses and documents. We want the truth. No matter what the White House says, they can't get in the way of that. Everyone wants the truth, maybe except a group of people in the White House.
Back here again.
Some Republican senators.
What's the Chief Justice's role here? In other words, if Senate Republicans vote against hearing from the witnesses, should the Chief Justice step in and call on those witnesses himself?
Well, the rules of the Senate are that the Chief Justice can make a ruling, and
where in that circle have I not gone
by
yet?
the Senate by majority vote.
This is a real
That's
question.
the rules of the impeachment trial. Now, we had Chris Van Hollen, Ben's colleague, had an amendment to Mr. McConnell's resolution that would require him to make a ruling. Not undoing the Senate's ability. Right now, he can defer. Chief Justice Rehnquist deferred on almost every ruling, didn't make a ruling, and let the Senate do it. We had hoped that the Chief Justice would make a ruling on these things. That was what our amendment said. Republicans don't seem to want to have any independent arbiter here. Yes.
Is there a way that, setting aside the witness argument, for the moment, is there a way that you can get at
Only for a moment.
Can you get at a witness question that you ask?
Well, there's going to be all kinds of different questions, but nothing substitutes for direct testimony and cross-examination of eyewitnesses who saw the gravamen of the charges against the president. So certainly there are going to be a whole lot of questions asked. But they're not a substitute for witnesses. Yes.
I sense magical energies ahead. The mages cannot be far.
Okay, look, first step. Four Republicans have to vote to allow witnesses and documents for legal harm, without any specific names. That's what we're fighting for now. Once that happens, let's hope it will, who knows, we think that the four witnesses we have for and the four sets of contemporaneous documents we have for are essential. And we're for all of those. We're not bargaining with that. If Republicans want to call witnesses, we think that witnesses who are not eyewitness to what happened, documents that are not relevant to what happened, shouldn't be part of this. Plain and simple. And if someone tries to make it part of this, I don't think the American people will like it very much. Yeah.
Is there testimony with
Well, first, let's say this. In my view, Rick Mulvaney is even more important witness than John Bolton, because he was right there with all of this. He was chief of cooking bottle boxes in terms of implementing this whole scheme. You listen to the House managers and some of the other people who testified. So that's number one. And what's the second part of that? Oh yeah, look, I believe there would not be a protracted argument. The House had legitimate consent. They saw what had happened with the president. This is a Senate trial where the Senate has the power to determine what's happening.
The King's Road should be
This
safer,
will
at
be
least
a
for the
subpoena
time
that
being.
will have bipartisan
We still have those
support by
Templars to
definition,
worry about, though.
51. And this will be signed by the Chief Justice. I think the courts will not give much attention to an argument of executive privilege in this situation, because it's the impeachment trial where the Senate has the right to conduct the trial. Yes, sir. Nope, not you. Guy behind you.
Senator Baldwin, actually, you brought up, you said that people would come to know the president told my colleague Ron Johnson the truth.
The Majors and the Templars chose a poor location for working out their differences.
Are you concerned that maybe Johnson is the one not telling the truth?
No, what I'm calling on is for every senator, including Ron Johnson, to vote to call John Bolton as a witness. We need witnesses, we need documents, we need witnesses with first-hand knowledge. I quoted what Johnson reported that the president said to him in their phone call on August 31st, 2019. It is inconsistent with the reporting last night of what John Bolton had said, and said that he heard from the president. One of them is not telling the truth, and I think that means that we should all have an interest in hearing from John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor to the president, as a witness.
Sure.
So, just to follow up on that, does that mean that perhaps Senator Johnson should testify? Does that put you in a difficult situation? You're saying one of them...
Look, my view is we don't want senators to testify. That's not the point here. We want the eyewitnesses to what the president did to testify. Over there. Try to call on a few different people here and there. Yeah.
Senator, what pressure does this put on people like Mitt Romney with the report about John Bolton? Do you see increased pressure for Romney, Gardner, Alexander?
Well, I never get into any specific names, but there's increased pressure on the whole. I mean, the eyes of America are upon the Republicans in the Senate. They have been before, and now what Mr. Bolton evidently wrote in his book puts even more, increases the desire of the American people to have a fair trial with witnesses and documents. And if there's pressure from what the American people want, a fair trial, that's how it is, plain and simple. It's not us putting on the pressure, it's Bolton and the desire, common sense, plain speaking desire for the truth, which has always been a hallmark of the American people.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, please.
Can I say one thing? We thought that the right way to proceed was to have the witnesses and documents before we started the trial itself. And we presented an opportunity for the Senate to deal with it. In response, our Republican colleagues said, no, we'll take that up later. Let's see whether we have a need for those witnesses and documents. We think we should have had them in the beginning so that we could have the proper presentation of the trial. But now that we have gone this route, it's clear that we need the witnesses. Look at what Mr. Bolton is saying. Look at what came out with Jeronis. We now have additional information that's come forward. There's conflict between what the president is saying today in the House manager's case, and there are people who have direct knowledge about that, who have not testified under oath subject to cross-examination. So our colleagues who said, we'll take this up later, there's now a very strong reason why they should vote to allow the witnesses.
Yes, the gentleman with the beard.
Thank you, sir. The president's defense team on Saturday said that there was no direct evidence that the president engaged in this pressure scheme. What is Bolton's revelation?
It's a report of direct evidence, and Bolton and the contemporaneous documents and all the others, all the more reason it should come before us.
How do you expect them to address that today?
We'll see. We're hoping. Look, we know the pressure they're under. President Trump does not brook criticism, dissent kindly among Republicans. But we're hoping in this kind of solemn, serious, historic, and constitutional proceeding that the weight of doing what's right, the weight of truth, the weight of getting all the facts will weigh heavily on the shoulders of enough Republicans so we can get a fair trial. And as we said before, we don't know exactly now. We know a little more because of this New York Times publication, but that's not under oath. We don't know what they'll say. All four of them. We don't know what the documents will say. These are hardly Democratic flunkies, nor are they never-Trumpers. They're employees of the president, some of the closest employees he's had. And what they say may be exculpatory. to the president. What they say may be further condemning of the president. We don't know. We want the truth. Yes.
So the next phase of this is the senators asking questions.
Well, no, the next phase is 2 more days of arguments by the
After they're
president's
done, but
lawyers.
the senators asking questions. Can you give us an idea? Are you having guidelines for what the senators can ask?
No. The only thing we might try to do is make sure that the questions, if 10 people want the same question, that we ask it once. Okay?
And they
In
can
the name
ask
of the
questions
10.
of both sides, your own team.
Yes, they can ask questions of both sides. Yes.
Senator Schumer, some of the president's defenders have questioned the timing of this report about Bolton. Do you think that...
I don't have any, I have no idea who leaked it and why, but it sure is damning. And we ought to find out from the person who made the comments, who wrote the book, under oath, plain and simple. Yes.
Would you say...
Teal. Your blue, your teal.
There's obviously been reports of...
I feel good that I know what teal is. And mauve. I know mauve now, and...
Would you go as far to say that you're optimistic that we've already heard reports of Senator Romney potentially breaking?
No, I've always said it's an uphill fight because of the pressure from the White House and the pressure from Leader McConnell, who don't want to hear the truth, but every day more evidence, or every few days something else happens that makes it clearer and clearer that we need the truth. That this is very serious stuff. This isn't just nothing. Thank you, everybody.
Do you have faith in your colleagues that they will?
We hope and pray.
Both of you have made the argument that nothing has changed, nothing is new, it doesn't actually change anything. But it has changed something. It's changed the calculus of some of your Republican colleagues that have been two witnesses. Can you tell us about the conversations you've had with your Republican colleagues where the ground seems to be shifting here, and are you prepared for this trial to go past potentially the state reunion past next week to all the expected?
So, after the last session, I did speak to
More shards. Okay. There's one in Mr. Dennett's house. There's one up there.
Probably will make the dynamic here. I think it is clear that the question of witnesses is going to come up anyway. And I think in this case, it may move the needle in one direction or another. And for the people that still are thinking that the foundation of how it originated, what we've heard so far, every senator will have a different opinion of how important that is. And I'm not going to deny it's going to change the decibel level and probably the intensity at which we go about talking about witnesses, which is going to be on Friday.
And the interesting thing to me is, Chuck Schumer comes up here and he always says, I just need 4 Republicans. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not about witnesses. He needs 4 Republicans to be the majority leader of the United States Senate. It is his magic number. That's his focus. He has known from the beginning that he was never going to have an opportunity to actually remove President Trump from office or remove President Trump from the ballot. His goal, as clearly stated, is to become the majority leader, not to remove the president.
And I add one thing to that. This is a political process. When it comes to how each of us has to look at this, that's different for every senator. And I think politically, Speaker Pelosi knew that we may be coming to this day. I just heard today, and you don't hear much about it, President Trump is leading the candidates in a New York Times Siena poll in Iowa. He's leading in some of the swing states. And when it all comes down to it, when you push this hard on something that you tried to do for so long, there is a political consequence. And after we get through this, that's the true measure, because we're overturning one election and we're trying to prevent another, and that'll weigh into everybody's conversation.
It was okay for the president to put full aid to coerce an announcement investigation. You said, and I quote, I'm saying it didn't happen. Apparently, John Bolton says that it did. Is John Bolton lying?
So, you know as well as I do when I said it didn't happen, because the aid was released. They had the meeting. There was not an investigation, and the one fact witness, President Zelensky, said there was no pressure. If you have to spell it out in detail, most people got that, That's what I meant. We'll find that out if we get to him as a witness. And President Trump said that what he's saying is not the case. So,
if you take a look at the picture of aid to Ukraine, and I've been there a number of times, President Trump
it's good to have commerce restored. I've many good.
Okay, so there's a chance that
is to say that, look, everyone was in the loop. And
there's a chance that the Republicans are going to ignore the new evidence that came out today. So that's something.
Significant here is Bill Barr, the Attorney General in the Bolton manuscript, according to the Times reporting. Bolton says he talked to the Attorney General after the July 25th call. He expressed concern about Rudy Giuliani sort of freelancing, potentially advancing his own personal interests. That is at odds with the version of events that the Justice Department has given, and indeed the Justice Department pushing back last night saying, no, what we've said is correct. Barr didn't know after the July 25th call. He didn't find out until after the whistleblower complaint had been filed. And that does fit in with the idea that, kind of a pox on all their houses in the administration, that everyone was in the loop. And also, I want to add that there was a fresh Washington Post ABC poll this morning that shows the president's political standing is actually much better than it was last time we polled on this in October. In October, Trump was behind double digits against all 6 of the top Democratic candidates. Now, all 6 he's within the margin of error with. His approval rating has gone up. That's largely because of independents, and it's largely driven by improved perceptions of how he's doing on the economy. And his approval rating overall has gone up a couple points beyond the margin of error. And so I think one of the goals for Democrats, because they recognize they're not going to remove him from office, is to sort of get this out there to kind of air the facts, absolutely, but also put a seed in the minds of some of these independent voters who gravitated toward Trump because of the economy, that character counts, that the president is sort of a shady character who can't be trusted, and that will ultimately be part of their argument in November, and that's why they don't want this to become a back and forth with Hunter and Joe Biden.
What does this say about Speaker Pelosi's strategy to hold the articles of impeachment for those couple weeks over the holiday break and then rolling into January? Does this give sort of some credit to her waiting at least a little bit longer for more facts to come out, for more information to surface?
To use a phrase from this entire episode, it was part of Speaker Pelosi's pressure campaign to try to push the Republicans on witnesses. And that is the whole Democratic exercise at this moment, is at one level to make a case against President Trump's conduct. They also want to make sure that the Republican Party, ahead of the 2020 elections, is held responsible for their support for President Trump and the way they're responding to his conduct. So it's a trial of the president and about how he handled Ukraine and Rudy Giuliani and President Zelensky, but it's also about the Republican Party. And that's why when you talk to top Democrats, they're okay with Speaker Pelosi holding back those articles of impeachment.
All right. We've been talking about these moderate Republican senators who we're watching very closely, especially now. One of them is Mitt Romney, and he spoke to CNN this morning about John Bolton, so let's listen to that.
I can't begin to tell you how John Bolton's testimony would ultimately play on a final decision, but it's relevant, and therefore I'd like to hear it. What impact that might have would be dependent upon all the facts associated with it. We hear from obviously prosecution and defense as to what was relevant and what was said and how that might influence our final vote, but I can't begin to tell you how that would be resolved. As I've indicated, I see myself as a senator juror, and in that capacity, I will maintain impartiality to the extent I can.
Senator, have you spoken to any of your Republican colleagues? Do you get the sense that more of them will be on board with voting for witnesses? 4 of you need to say yes. Do you think there are 4 votes?
I think it's increasingly likely that other Republicans will join those of us who think we should hear from John Bolton.
Well, our colleague Sung Min Kim also cut
So we've got 1 down, 3 more to go.
Increased conversation.
Okay, that's an improvement.
Now, it's important to note that Mitt Romney has not yet addressed whether he wanted to see the manuscript itself or if he has questions about who in the White House might have known about these contents of the manuscript beforehand. Let's bring Amber Phillips into the conversation. Amber, I want to get your thoughts on how Republicans are responding, but first, I see the impeachment managers at the microphone, so let's go hear what Chairman Schiff has to say.
comments about the Bolton revelations and then answer one or two questions. We're running a little late, so we'll have to keep it to that. The news of the last 24 hours that John Bolton not only is prepared to testify, but that based on his manuscript, that testimony would include a direct conversation with the President of the United States, where the President made it clear that he was conditioning military aid on political investigations or material that he wanted.
Do I have any weapon modifications for
makes
this current
it all
staff?
the more clear why you can't have a trial, a meaningful trial, without witnesses, and you certainly can't have one without John Bolton. I am, pleased that the senators are reconsidering. Some that had, I think, questions about the utility witness testimony, they appear to be reconsidering, and I think that's very positive because this witness obviously has such relevant information to shed on the most egregious of all of the charges in the articles of impeachment, and that is that the President of the United States withheld hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid from an ally at war to help secure that nation's help to cheat in the next election. Now, let me make one other point, though, very clear. We already have testimony on this key pernicious charge against the President, and that testimony has been consistent and uniform and uncontested. When the President's counsel says, as they did on the Senate floor, that there's no direct evidence the President ever told someone he was conditioning the aid on these investigations, that's just not correct. He told Mick Mulvaney, and Mick Mulvaney admitted it publicly, saying that he had discussed this DNC server issue with the President, and that was part of the reason they held up the money. So the President's own Chief of Staff has already admitted to discussing this with the President. What's more, Ambassador Sondland spoke to the President on September 7th, and while the President denied a quid pro quo, he then went on to explain to Sondland there was in fact a quid pro quo over the aid. That is, Zelensky had to go to the mic to answer these, announce these investigations. And of course, all of the other circumstantial evidence, the fact that there was no legitimate reason for holding the aid, the fact that all of the National Security staff, all of his advisors, and the other secretaries were urging that it be released. The uncontradicted evidence is as simple as 2 + 2 = 4. Nevertheless, the President's lawyers sought to contest this charge.
And on occasion enemies. It's
and
unavoidable.
now that they have, they cannot dispute the relevance and the importance of John Bolton's testimony. So you have to come in, testify under oath. Senators should not wait until March 17 when the book comes out. They should demand this information while it would still be pertinent to their decision.
You say you spent some time in Lothian. You know the champion.
We spoke a few times. I seldom left the Chantry, and we never became more than casual acquaintances.
No, because what that argument amounts to, and bear in mind, we could use that approach with other witnesses like Don McGahn. It is now more than 9 months since we subpoenaed Don McGahn, and we're nowhere near a court decision. So when people say, why didn't you go to court to insist and fight and go through the district court and the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, we would still have that question unresolved a year from now. So it's really an argument to say that the President should be able to unilaterally decide whether and when he can be impeached. Given that he was attempting and has been attempting and continues to attempt to cheat in the next election, we did not feel we could wait. Now, it isn't a question for John Bolton. Why? He was unwilling to testify when we invited him to testify in the House. Why? Well, I don't know, but I think you should answer that question. But he is, for whatever reason, he was unwilling to come before the House. He is willing to come before the Senate. And the senators should not turn away from this very relevant evidence.
We are not Templars any longer. We are all part of the Inquisition.
Mano had a question, yes, I want to give others
And what does that mean exactly?
I'm sorry?
Back already, Chance. Haven't you done enough?
You know,
I'm
it's
curious,
not a question
Commander,
of
as
whether
to how your
I trust John
Inquisition and its
Bolton
herald
or the
will restore order
Republican
as you
Senator John
promised.
Bolton or the Democratic senators.
Of course you are.
He should be placed
Back
under
to your
oath.
duties, all of you.
And this is why we think the testimony should be public. It should be live. Let the American people, along with the senators, evaluate John Bolton's credibility when he testifies and make their own judgment. But to say that we're going to blind ourselves from a witness who has so clearly relevant testimony to one of the central, most serious allegations against the president, I don't see how you can have a fair trial without testimony like that. Thank you.
Random clerics who weren't important enough to be at the conclave.
The impeachment manager is talking to reporters as they prepare to head into the Senate chambers. The trial will start around 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We're here in the Washington Post studio with Robert Costa, James Hillman, and
proper authority failed.
Just a few thoughts on Chairman Schiff's comments. Notable that he did not lean into possibly calling Ambassador Bolton as a witness at the House Intelligence Committee at this time. He believed, and he went after his critics there. He said, we tried to get McGahn. McGahn fought us in the court. McGahn still hasn't appeared on Capitol Hill. So he said Democrats need to keep moving forward and push Republicans, because it comes down to the Democratic fear that if they move to subpoena Bolton or someone like McGahn or another top official, that the White House will assert executive privilege, and this will lead to at least 4 to 5 weeks, if not 4 to 5 months of battles in federal court. So Schiff at the moment not ready to call Bolton via subpoena to testify before the House of Representatives, which many Democrats have floated in recent days as an option if the Senate Republicans didn't move on witnesses at the trial.
It seems like one of the strongest Republican pushbacks right now is Democrats didn't do their job when the House had control of this. And so, you know, we're looking at the testimony that we've got in front of us. We are taking
even though we don't know what really happened at the Temple of
Republicans
Sacred
who have been
Ashes.
involved in the Clinton impeachment process, pushing it off on the House, you know, has the responsibility to the investigation into this, James. And we heard Chip pushing back at that today.
Yeah,
We'll be happy to use someone as a scapegoat.
There have been 19. Nobody cares about the truth. There's been federal judges, others. They've all had witnesses. They've all requested more documents. The way it works in the criminal justice system is that you have something akin to an indictment, which is what the House impeaching is, and then you have a trial where things are weighed. During the Clinton impeachment, if that's the standard that Republicans say they want to use, you know, they did depositions with Monica Lewinsky and Vernon Jordan and Sid Blumenthal and others. And so Democrats, I think, are frustrated that Republicans seem to want to put Schiff on trial when they feel like they're the prosecutors. You know, one of the things Ted Cruz, in addition to talking about Hunter Biden, is also talking about trying to get the Adam Schiff subpoena, trying to get him to be called as witness, talk about his dealings with the whistleblower. And I think that's kind of a very Trumpian approach to try and put the prosecutor on trial, to kind of, it's part of the general approach of whataboutism that we often see when they have their back up against the wall.
We'll talk more about Adam Schiff and how he's become a focus of attention. But Amber, I want to get a sense from you, because you've been reporting this morning on how these moderate Republicans and other Republicans in the Senate are reacting to the Bolton administration.
Yeah, well, I've been gathering our amazing congressional colleagues reporting on that on Capitol Hill. I'm hearing a range of answers. So Schiff's goal in this press conference was to keep the pressure on Senate Republicans to consider hearing Bolton, which is no easy feat. They would open the door to damaging testimony that could make them overthrow their party's president. This is no easy feat that Schiff's trying to do. On one end, you have Trump drawing a red line saying Bolton's lying, right? I don't hear senators say that. I don't hear them go this far with this, like, Republican icon. I hear top senators like John Cornyn say, well, maybe he's dramatizing. He just wants to sell books. I hear other senators like John Thune say, well, this doesn't change the facts of the case. Ukraine got its aid, and maybe it was okay for President Trump to ask the Bidens to be investigated. So they're essentially like defending the wrongdoing that Democrats are claiming. But here's what's interesting. Like, those are all Republican responses to avoid having to call John Bolton and witnesses. I hear a couple of them talk about putting the onus on the White House to explain this. Joni Ernst in particular said, I don't want to comment. I want to wait until I hear what the White House counsel has to say in 15 minutes or so. So
May I have a moment?
What I hear from that is, I want to be on your
Yes,
team,
Ambassador?
President Trump, but you guys have to give me something to work with here to explain to my constituents why I'm not going to call John Bolton.
Certainly.
What would you like to know?
And that, I think that's such a great roundup of the range of reactions. And what I think the Ernst comment puts that is the private frustration. That there are a lot of Senate Republicans who were caught off guard by this. If it was, as Shane explained, sort of circulating around the White House counsel's office for the last month,
some of these senators have kind of climbed out on a limb, the ones that we're not talking about
If that's
as
what you
potential
want, I'll send a
forwards
letter
for
to my
witnesses,
family.
and now all of a
respect the
sudden
request
they
if it
feel
comes
like
from
maybe
me.
they walked too far, and maybe they're going to have to walk it back or change their arguments. And so senators, like all people, but especially senators, love to sort of feel like they're in the loop, that they're aware of what the White House knows. Mitch McConnell has said publicly that he's working hand in hand with the president's legal team. That they're a united front.
He actually
and
is descended from Andraste.
What exactly McConnell
So
knew
that's...
about what the Bolton manuscript said, if information was shared with him. That's one of the reporting targets for today, is sort of what McConnell knew and whether there's
Even
any
though I'm a
frustration
mage,
among the leadership
that
team
doesn't give them
about
pause.
the fact that this was potentially held back from them.
Mages from noble families
President Trump basically says Bolton's lying and the conversation never happened. He's going on Twitter threads over the past 14 hours or so, trying to undermine John Bolton, using words like revenge and out-of books is like the gist of people he's retweeting.
Even our
Where does
circle's
that
fall
put
was
the
quiet.
president's
Everyone just...
inside the courtroom, the Senate chambers, and also outside as they kind of try to do damage control about this?
Well, you see from many allies of President Trump already a willingness to go to political war against Ambassador Bolton. And we will likely see more of that in the weeks to come if he moves closer to testifying in the Senate trial. The White House is uneasy, to say the least, about Bolton's testimony if it happens, because they know that he, as James said so well, is not a figure who comes out of the Trump loyalist ranks. He's someone with his own political capital inside of the Republican Party.
This can't be what you're accustomed to,
He's
Ambassador.
also a savvy operator who has his own political action committee. He has his own book deal. He's been in Washington for years. He also has
the wildlife.
A really sharp memory. And I've covered him for over a decade, interviewed him many times. He actually tried to run for president a few times. People
Don't worry about me.
He tried to
Haven's
run for
more than
president.
livable.
He is someone who would always carry a briefcase into the White House.
feel,
A big legal briefcase, leather, battered, full of binders and legal pads, and he was just seen as a lawyer first inside of the White House, a knife-wielding lawyer, not literally, but politically inside, in terms of knowing how to carve out his own space inside of the administration.
Visiting dignitaries I should watch out
So the world knows John Bolton as this mustached diplomat, but people who really know him as a lawyer who has sharp elbows. President Trump trying to say this is
Please tell me if you find
bitter, bitterness on Bolton's part for being quote unquote fired from the White House. I just wonder how much traction that's going to have. Amber, Oh, sorry, go ahead.
One thing I want to add on Bolton is
I'll speak with you later.
The idea that he's going to be a flip on President Trump. No one who knows Bolton thinks that. They think he's a conservative, so he'll call out the president's conduct, but the Democrats shouldn't put all their chips on him. And you see senators like Chris Murphy of Connecticut say, we have to be careful with Bolton because we don't know exactly what he's going to say either. But did you find the president's sort of attack on Bolton fascinating? Because there could be a move in the White House to sort of say, yeah, whatever, sort of downplay the importance or significance of what he says, not necessarily try to paint him as a bitter, treacherous person.
I mean, everyone who's had an experience working for President Trump, you're either with him totally and a loyalist to the end, or you're the enemy. And he will go to war with you on Twitter with his own legal action. I mean, look at Michael Cohen. All these people throughout the years who were broken with President Trump. Close aides, confidants, and then
I spent time in the best circle in the world, so yeah.
Trump has survived all of those. There's like a graveyard almost of half a dozen people flipping on the president for whatever reason or getting caught and having to admit what they know. And President Trump's still the president. So even if Bolton and Democrats dream scenarios like, let's do this, let's take down the president,
we would send our best when we know it, when we see it. It's much home. A parade is on the battlefield, but also stand against you see, they stand against a force, a cause. Our skill is yours.
Bush administration. He sort of blames other staff for a lot of his frustrations with George W. Bush. He doesn't go after Bush for sort of like failing to pursue the path he wanted on North Korea or Iran. Instead, he turns a lot of his ire, on Condi Rice and others in the administration. And one of the reasons that
be done in an
hour, in the Trump administration are nervous is that book about the Bush years has detailed dialogue about specific things, quotes that are long and attributed to people in the Bush White House. And
Your author friend is truly a mystery. Our search uncovered only a string of foreign accounts. The trail of coin led from Antiva to Windsor to the Freemasons and Relay. Someone hid their tracks well, but not well enough. Your writer isn't Kirkwall. Remember, you owe me a favor.
Who left these meetings and literally, he described in his car, wrote down a memo of what he was concerned about.